All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to fundamentally rewire your network troubleshooting muscle memory for the IPv6 era. Now, for some quick context, this is actually part 3 of an incredible 8-part tutorial called IPv6 Troubleshooting for System Administrators and Technical Support. It was put together by Virtualization Options LLC, which is this fantastic technology research, education, and advisory group out of Colorado. So if you are a sysadmin or a tech support pro and you're helping your organization migrate from IPv4 to IPv6 and you already know your way around IPv4 pretty well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're zeroing in exclusively on Chapter 3 of their material, breaking down the exact mindset shifts and the practical, hands-on steps you need to diagnose modern network issues. We've got a seriously packed agenda today for diagnosing those notoriously silent dual-stack failures. First, we'll unlearn our old IPv4 habits, then explore the dual-stack reality, navigate the PMTUD black hole, fix up tunnels and VPNs, and finally, lock down your core troubleshooting rules.
Okay, Section 1, Unlearn IPv4 Muscle Memory. We really need a different mindset here. Right out of the gate, we have to acknowledge a pretty hard truth. IPv6 is not just a bigger address space that someone bolted on to our existing networks. It is a completely different paradigm. Your old assumptions? They're going to actively lead you astray.
I mean, it can be a real visual shock to our IPv4 comfort zone when we look at a modern interface, right? In the old days, if you saw multiple IP addresses on a single interface, you immediately thought, okay, who misconfigured the server? But here, seeing a link local address starting with FE80 right alongside a global unicast address, plus some temporary privacy addresses happily coexisting, that is perfectly normal. It's totally by design. If you try to troubleshoot that setup as an error, you are going to be spinning your wheels for hours.
And you know, this perfectly illustrates why your old, trusty toolkit is just broken here. Think about how much you rely on broadcast traffic in IPv4. Well, guess what? Broadcast is literally dead in IPv6. It's been completely replaced by multicast. ARP, gone. That's been replaced by the Neighbor Discovery Protocol, or NDP. And honestly, perhaps the biggest trip-up for most people, DHCP no longer hands out your default gateway. Instead, hosts rely entirely on periodic router advertisements. If those RAs get blocked somewhere, your devices will silently lose their default route without ever trying to renew a lease. It's exactly the kind of thing that makes you want to pull your hair out.
Moving right along to Section 2, the dual-stack reality, and those dreaded invisible failures. Let's talk about the messy, complicated reality most of us are living in right now, which is running both IPv4 and IPv6 stacks simultaneously on production networks.
So, the really crucial thing to grasp here is that a broken IPv6 path doesn't always throw a glaring hard error. Thanks to a mechanism called happy eyeballs, which by the way is defined in RFC 8305, browsers actually prefer IPv6. But if IPv6 is quietly failing in the background, the browser just waits for a tiny 250 millisecond delay before falling back and racing it against IPv4. To the end user, the connection doesn't technically drop. It just silently slows down every single page load by a quarter of a second. It's literally an invisible tax on your entire network's performance.
Now, when addresses are being handed out, IPv6 uses something called duplicate address detection, or DAD for short. It sends out a neighbor solicitation just to make sure the IP is clear. If another host responds, boom, that address gets slapped with a DAD failed flag and it just sits there in a tentative state. So if you run a command like ip-6 add or show and you see DAD failed, you immediately know DAD has caught a conflict. This is incredibly common if you're dealing with cloned VMs that accidentally share identical MAC addresses, or if you happen to have a rogue device hanging out on that network segment.
Speaking of rogue devices, we have got to talk about rogue router advertisements. Oh man, this is a massive headache, especially if you've ever had a rogue Docker container accidentally broadcast itself as the gateway and basically black hole half your subnet. We've all been there, right? When these hijack your traffic, here are your exact actionable fixes. First, explicitly disable IPv6 on Docker bridge networks right in the daemon.json file. Second, make sure you enable RA guard on all your switch access ports to block those RAs at the hardware level. You really should also isolate your VM or container traffic to a separate VMAN entirely, and just disable IPv6 on virtual switches for host-only adapters in your hypervisors. Do those things and you'll instantly lock down your segment. All right, Section 3, the PMTUD black hole. We're talking silent packet drops here. Now we're going to tackle one of the absolute most notorious and frustrating traps in modern networking.
Have you ever just wanted to pull your hair out because a tiny basic ping works perfectly, but the second you try an SSH session or an HTTPS request or try to pull a large file, the whole connection just stalls out right after the TCP handshake? It feels so random, but actually it is highly predictable.
Let's trace exactly how this silent failure happens. It's like a chain reaction. First, your source sends a large IPv6 packet outbound. Somewhere down the line, a router hits a smaller maximum transmission unit, or MTU limit, on the very next link. Now that router does exactly what it's supposed to do. It drops the oversized packet, generates an ICMP6 Type 2 message that basically shouts, "Hey, packet too big," and sends it back to the source so it knows to fragment or reduce the size. But here is the fatal flaw. Your overly strict, legacy-minded firewall blocks that inbound ICMP6 warning. The source never gets the memo. It just keeps helplessly resending that same large packet, and your traffic basically falls straight into a black hole.
So what's the fix? Well, the absolute, non-negotiable primary fix is you have to permit ICMP v6 Type 2 inbound on all firewalls in your path. Seriously, it is not optional in IPv6. Now, if you don't control the firewall, your alternative fallback is to configure TCP MSS clamping on your router interface. For example, using IPv6 TCP adjust MSS 1440 on a Cisco device. And this is critical. Remember that the absolute minimum MTU allowed by the IPv6 standard is exactly 1280 bytes. Never, ever configure an MTU lower than that. That is your hard floor.
Okay, Section 4, navigating tunnels and VPNs. Basically, how to avoid leaks. Let's transition into an area where legacy software just catastrophically meets modern infrastructure.
A lot of networks today use NAT64 to translate IPv6 packets into IPv4 at the edge. They pair that with DNS64 to trick IPv6 clients by synthesizing fake AAA records for IPv4-only servers, usually by just slapping the prefix 64.ff90b/96 right on the front. It's honestly a clever workaround. But here is the trap. If your developers or your applications are using hard-coded IPv4 literals, like, say, trying to connect directly to 1.2.3.4, they bypass that DNS synthesis entirely because, well, DNS64 can't help you if DNS isn't even being queried. That means the connection simply breaks.
And then we have VPNs. Legacy IPsec clients or quirky OpenVPN setups often just ignore IP6 entirely. What happens? You get split tunnel leaks where IP6 traffic completely bypasses all your corporate security policies and just sneaks out the local internet connection. To stop this, you really have two strict choices. Option A, explicitly configure the VPN to route IP6 through the tunnel by pushing a default 00/0 route. If you can't do that, you got to go with option B, completely disable IP6 on the client device while the VPN is active. Also, if your users are getting weird random DNS results, make sure you verify your internal DNS server is actually answering over the VPN. You can do that by running dig + short AAA targeted specifically at your VPN's DNS server address.
Finally, Section 5, Core Troubleshooting Rules. These are your golden guidelines to wrap this explainer up. We're going to look at the immutable laws of IPv6 troubleshooting that you absolutely need to enforce across your whole team.
Seriously, go ahead and screenshot this slide right now. Save it to your desktop, email it to your security team. You simply cannot treat ICMP v6 the way we treated ICMP and IPv4. It's not just for pinging, it is fundamentally baked into how the protocol operates. Blocking type 2, you just broke path MTU discovery. Blocking types 133 through 137, you just broke neighbor discovery entirely, meaning your hosts can't even find routers or resolve addresses. If your firewall is dropping these by default, your network is basically already broken.
Building off of that, here are your 3 golden operational rules. Number 1, always test your stacks independently. Because of happy eyeballs, a dual stack failure can hide in plain sight. Use commands like curl6 versus curl4 to isolate the failing protocol before you jump to any conclusions. Number 2, while you absolutely must allow standard ICMP v6, you should explicitly drop what are called atomic fragments at the firewall. These are fragment headers with no actual fragmentation, and they are a known nasty security risk used to bypass firewalls. And number 3, document your delegated prefixes meticulously.
An ISP changing a prefix on you will silently break your static configurations if you aren't paying attention.
I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. A ton of firewalls, load balancers, and WAN optimizers out there default to silently dropping IPv6 packets that contain unknown or unexpected extension headers. So as you head back to your desk and pull up your network logs, ask yourself this. If your security appliances are silently discarding these packets without a single warning, what other invisible, dual-stack failures are dragging down your network's performance and frustrating your users right this very second? It might just be time to find out. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy troubleshooting.